Okay, so I actually find it really fascinating that all of the controversies regarding the reboot actually pushed me over the edge to do this. So now we're going to talk about Winx Club Season 3, and I don't think I need to explain what Winx Club is because I'm pretty sure that everyone who's clicking onto this video by chance and everyone who's listening will know the show. This is not an insight into the show or anything like that. Like, this is for people who know their material, who know the good stuff. So we're talking spoilers, we're talking about all the minute details. Season 3 is pretty fascinating because while in season 1 there was like one big overarching story and it was followed through almost every episode, it still very much felt like in season 1 every episode is its own small contained story, while season 2 was kind of different in that regard because it did have smaller arcs, like for example the Downland arc and the Wildland arc and stuff like that, but it was still keeping that sort of episodic nature to it. Or actually, I think season 2 is extreme in the regard that it does have these small arcs, but it also has standalone episodes that are very, very standalone. Like, for example, the Halloween episode, the Show Must Go On episode, and stuff like that. While season 3 kind of is multiple arcs stitched together, and there's barely any like standalone episodes. I can only think of some, and we're going to talk about all of them, but there's only very few standalone episodes, and I think that's why season 3 is remembered so fondly, because it's on a very basic level very easy to remember because it flows very naturally, and I think that's one of its big strengths. We actually start off with Stella being invited to her princess ball, and something that I remember as a child being very flabbergasted by is that they were actually talking about arranged marriages, and this show is kind of notorious for having a weird amount of arranged and also forced marriages, which I think is crazy because it's not really part of Central European culture. So I think we associate it with fantasy, and I think that's why it works for a European show, because to us it's something of a pastime. So I think that's why it feels very surreal to us and otherworldly. So the beginning of season 3, in my opinion, is really strong because we have these two colliding storylines that are kind of going parallel to each other. We have the Winx just living their lives and being very chill, and actually chill to a degree that is unusual almost. And it makes the beginning feel very calm. But on the other hand, we have the Tricks, and we're following their storyline within the Omega Dimension, and we are seeing them basically struggling to survive, and they just happen to stumble upon Valtor, and they free him. The thing is, something that I find funny is they're technically not even freeing him because they want his help. They're just freeing him because they want to feed him to the snakes. So they just see him as fodder, basically. And then they realize, oh my god, this guy actually is pretty powerful. And then they decide to team up together to escape from the Omega Dimension. It's basically them escaping that sends this shockwave through the ocean that then alerts the Winx. And I think that's both narratively but also visually very cool that we have these two storylines that are going parallel in the beginning, and then they basically converge in the ocean, and we see Aisha dive back to her home planet to investigate. Basically every season starts off with Bloom and Stella. It's kind of like a thing. So in season 1 we obviously have the introduction of Bloom, followed by her meeting Stella. And then in season 2 we have the Downland arc, which does include other characters like Aisha and the specialists, but it's still very focused on Bloom and Stella. And then in season 3 we have the beginning in Magic City where they're going shopping together. So again we have this focus on Bloom and Stella, and I think that's very cute because they are kind of a duo. So I like that they're showing their bond. And also this scene of them trying on different clothes lives in my head rent-free. Oh my god, as a child I was so mesmerized by that scene. I remember every outfit, and it's crazy. I love it so much. Also, we're introduced to Chimera, and can we talk about her design for a second? Because I think it's absolutely amazing. She is the perfect foil to Stella, both character-wise but also visually. And she has this gothic Lolita kind of style going on. I don't know fashion terms, to be quite honest, so I've heard people describe her as Gothic Lolita. And also her two little minions. I think they're very cute and funny. And also their designs. Something that I really like about the early seasons is that basically every character has something special to their design, even if their characters are very small. And then we follow them going to Solaria, and we meet King Radius for the first time. We've seen him in like dream sequences before, but this is the first time we're actually meeting him. And there we'll also meet Cassandra and find out that Chimera is her daughter, which I think is very funny. I love the scene of them like confronting each other and Bloom just going like, yeah, no, like I think this is the start of a blossoming friendship or something like that, she says. I don't know the exact quote, but I think that it was so funny. And also I find it fascinating that Cassandra in that scene is kind of acting surprised, and she's acting like, oh my god, why are they fighting, what is going on, because she's still at that point where she's like trying to put up this facade of nicety. Is that a word? I don't know. Then we have the big reveal that King Radius is going to marry Cassandra, and Stella freaks out about it, understandably. We have this amazing scene where Chimera casts a spell on Stella to transform her into a monster, and she was given that power by Valtor, and the only thing he wanted was to bathe in the sun of Solaria. And I think it's kind of insane that Cassandra's just like, oh yeah, sure, I mean, we're the kingdom of the sun or whatever, and you're this like weird wizard that came through the wall, but yeah, sure, just walk into a literally sealed room, which I for some reason have access to, and bathe in the sun because I'm so power hungry. I think it's batshit insane that she just trusts him like that, but sure, whatever. Stella is transformed and she cannot use her magic anymore, and the wings are being attacked by the guards because Cassandra put Radius under a spell. When they escape, they have to go through these tunnels, and there are these spider creatures and stuff like that, but the hounds of the castle, they still recognize there are a lot of very cute moments that characterize Stella to a very strong degree, actually. And also, I think the show actually handles the topic of like appearance pretty well for what it is, a kids show. Of course, it does not go into the minutia of like the beauty industry and the pressure on young women to be beautiful and stuff like that, but they do try to make a point that Brandon still loves her even though she looks like a monster, which I think is cute. And I think it's pretty relatable to a lot of pretty people to find themselves in social groups where, even if it's not true, they do consider their value within the group to be their beauty, because it's kind of suggested by society at large that if you're pretty, that's basically enough. You did your due. You don't have to do anything else anymore. And for some people that can feel on a weird level, it's a relief, because it's like, okay, all I have to do is be pretty. But at the same time, I think you're very aware of the ficklency of that. So you know that at any second that could break away, because beauty is such a surface level thing, quite literally, and it can be taken from you at any second, because at the end of the day, beauty is a privilege, and that can create a lot of mental pressure to retain that beauty. I'm not saying anything new. You know all of this already, but I do like the fact that they're trying to tackle the subject within season 3. And also I think it's a very nice like full circle moment later on in the season, once they're going to the water stars, but we're going to get there, I swear. The Stella monster arc then culminates in them having to travel to a random cave on Magix to find the mirror of truth to transform her back, and on the way there they have to fight these griffins, which is a really good example of very bad CGI, but it's fine. It's fine. Especially there's this one clip where Musa attaches herself to the spaceship, and she's literally touching the turbine of the spaceship, which doesn't make any sense. Like, she should be shredded into 1,000 pieces, but it's fine. The mirror of truth only starts working once Stella realizes that her beauty is not what made her a unique and interesting person, and is not the thing that gave her value. So all of her friends start giving her compliments about why they love to be friends with her, and I think that's something that a lot of people actually need to hear. And even though it might not be the most relatable thing, because I think for a lot of people their beauty is something that they are constantly trying to enhance, and Stella is very much a person who already feels very beautiful. So for her, it's more about the loss of beauty instead of the attaining of beauty. And also this shows that these characters, like everything that they're saying about Stella is something that can be pointed at within the show, within the first 3 seasons. And I feel like it's so sad because in the later seasons, none of these characteristics actually still apply to her as a character because she's been so flanderized and turned into a caricature of herself. So if they were to give this type of speech in the later seasons, everyone would be like, well, is that true though? After that, we straight up go to Andros because Aisha comes back and she tells us about how Valtor broke free and that it kind of messed up the ocean on her home planet, which already, like, in season 3 we basically hop from planet to planet, which is crazy because that does not happen in season 1 and 2. Like, we do travel to Domino, for example, and in season 2 we did travel to Heraklion, but here is basically the first time we're doing this like planet hopping situation, which I think is really cool because it makes the magic universe feel even bigger than it already felt. So now we're on Andros. And something that I really like about the visuals of Andros is that the water is not blue. In any other scenario, you'd expect the water planet to be blue, but it's not. The water is like very murky, and it's kind of ambiguous whether or not that is because of Valtor and like the distress he caused within the ocean. But I think that's just what the water looks like on that planet, and I think that's really amazing. And now we have to talk about the mermaids, because the mermaids in season 3, immaculate designs. These mermaids are so incredibly beautiful. I don't know how they did that. The season 5 mermaids could never. They could never. Never ever could they. But I do remember actually once they introduced the character of Tressa, that as a child I actually was very disappointed in her character design because I felt like she looked very different compared to all of the other mermaids, and probably that was intentional because she is an actual character and all the other mermaids are just background dressing basically. And she was supposed to be like a war princess mermaid, which I think is really cool. Now as an adult I have a newfound appreciation for that, but I remember as a child thinking like the other ones are prettier. Also, Queen Ligeia, her design is also very unique. She has this very angular face and these very like red cheeks, which I think looks kind of funny, but it also works. On Andros is also the first time the Winx meet the Tricks this season and they have a fight, which to be fair, I like the banter in the fight, but they reuse a lot of animation. There are a lot of like flying shots and stuff like that that are shown multiple times, and it's very noticeable, which is kind of a shame, but whatever. And then Bloom faces off with Valtor. Well, she doesn't really face off because there's no actual fight happening, but she talks to him and you can actually feel like the hierarchy between them, that Valtor is just utterly outclassing Bloom in every way, which is very new because when we left the Winx, Bloom was very much in a position of power and she felt very powerful, but here we have this new threat which is very clearly not on her level in like a bad way because he is above her. But then we have Aisha, this badass hero that she is just like, okay, you don't want to fight her? Well, then fight me. But of course we all know what happens next. He blinds her, which I think is like the worst thing he could have done to her, because in season 2, when she is introduced as a character, we find out that she's deadly afraid of the dark and she struggles with loneliness. So her being blinded is like a literal nightmare come true to her. And also the way they animated it, they made her eyes white, they made her eyes pale, so it's also very different compared to, for example, the blinding spells that we've seen Darcy do to characters where the eyes go black. And I think the white eyes make it even creepier. But of course the lesson is that even though she's blind, her friends will not abandon her. And I think it would have been kind of insane if they had kept her blind, but to be fair, I don't think Winx is graceful enough to tackle that subject, to be fair, so I think it is good that she regains her eyesight. Also, the way she does it is so iconic. That scene is so pretty, like the way she heals herself with her newfound Enchantix power and the glitter falling onto her eyelids and healing her eyesight. It's just so pretty. So after they freed Ligeia and fought off the Kraken, Ligeia is hit by the Kraken and is like dying, I guess. I always found that to be a little like over the top. It's like, okay, yeah, she got hit, but okay, she's dying now, what? And then of course Aisha sacrifices her eyesight in return for Ligeia's life using the coral crystal, and that is earning her enchantix. I'm not going to talk about her enchantix too much right now because I do have like an entire section where I just want to talk about the enchantix designs and the sequences and stuff like that, so we're just going to gloss over that for a hot minute. After that arc, we actually have our first kind of breather episode where the Winx are tasked to clean up the library, and Stella, being Stella, she summons like a genie, which is an evil spirit in that universe. And I found it very funny that she explicitly references Aladdin. That's a story from Earth. You shouldn't know that story, but whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Continuity. And then they fight. And something that I've noticed as an adult, which I never actually noticed as a child, isn't it kind of insane that they make a point to remove Aisha from the situation? She's the one who's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get the pixies to safety. You're the strongest of the group at this point. You're the only one that has enchantix powers, so why are you the one bringing the pixies to safety? That doesn't make any sense. But I do get it because I think they didn't want to show off her enchantix in that scene, because then it would feel weird, like, oh, she has this new power, but now she cannot deal with this random monster. So she would have outshone every other character in that moment, and that's why I think they kept it for a more special moment, which we're going to get in the next couple of episodes, actually. So after that, we're invited to Heraklion, to Sky's party, basically, and they're assuming that like there's going to be a big announcement regarding Bloom, which I think is really, really cute. And we get to see these other kings and queens from other realms, including King Radius and Cassandra with Chimera. And I really like that because it makes that storyline feel present. Even though there's not much happening with them in this episode, every once in a while we're cutting back to King Radius and the situation on Solaria, which makes it feel present. And whatever happens at the back of our minds, we're reminded this is still happening. Solaria is still being thrown over by Cassandra. Then, of course, Valtor does what he did to Chimera as well. He manipulates Diaspro into doing his bidding by promising her what she wants. And Diaspro is a very fascinating character because in season 1, people have talked about it a lot, but in season 1, she is made out to be a villain, even though she kind of really isn't. And I'm not saying like she's the nicest, bestest person to ever person, but I do think that she was just brutally attacked by a stranger at an event, and everyone was siding with the attacker, which is kind of insane. She is a victim of the system as well. Like, she was raised to be a princess, and I think especially in season 2 we learned that all of her anger and frustration is basically grounded in frustration. She's very frustrated because she feels like she played the part, she did what everyone wanted her to do, and in return she just expects what she was promised. And I think that's a totally valid expectation. And now she's not even getting that. So I understand her frustration, honestly. In season 3 is where she does cross the line because she's like straight up, she's not poisoning Sky, but she's like putting him under a curse, which is going too far because she's actively taking away Sky's autonomy at this point. So she does actually become a villain, and I personally would have liked her journey to go into a different direction because I think she's much more of an interesting character in this gray area than just flat out evil. But that's that. The Winx are once again chased by guards, and we see that Cassandra and Chimera are just leaving. They're just leaving. They're like, okay, yeah, can you fight off that dragon, babes? Yeah, like we're just going to go. And that is so heartbreaking. So of course then Stella saves him. She earns her enchantix, which I think is amazing, which is also sadly kind of like the last time we see her use her scepter, at least while transformed. We do see her use it a couple more times to teleport while untransformed, but I do think it's an interesting choice that they decided to remove her scepter from her enchantix. And I do get it because visually speaking, it kind of doesn't work anymore, because Enchantix is a very detailed transformation, and the scepter would have kind of put it over the top, in my opinion. So I do understand it, even though it kind of doesn't really make narrative sense for her to stop using her scepter. After that, we kind of just leave the situation, which I think is very good, because this far, the Winx weren't actually able to save anyone or anything. They just managed to save themselves, and that barely. I mean, look what happened to Aisha just a couple of episodes ago. We're left with all of these rotten situations. We have Celeria, where like the government is thrown out. Well, it's not a government, it's a monarchy. Is a monarchy a government? No, it's not. A monarchy is a monarchy, and a government cannot be monarchical. I'm losing my grasp of language. Then we have Andros, which is flooded with mutant mermaids, which, by the way, I've not talked about this yet, but the mutant versions of the mermaids, also chef's kiss. Season 5 could never. Season 5 could never. Well, to be fair, the state of Heraklion is fine. I'm pretty sure that the king and queen, King Arendor and Queen Samara, they're fine with this situation. They're probably happy about it. I mean, they wanted Sky to marry Diaspora anyways, so they're probably like, okay, our son is extremely hot and cold and apparently insane, but at least he's now marrying the girl we wanted him to marry, so we're not gonna make a fuss about it, which I think is very fascinating. After that little arc, we have the siege on Althea, and this episode, my friends, I love this episode so much, because not only do we have the Trix and Valtor infiltrate Cloud Tower, we have them attack Althea, and it's kind of crazy how willing the show was to depict this as an actual like war situation, because Griselda straight up tells the fairies like, we have to protect the school even if it costs our lives. Like, she straight up says that, which I love, because it makes the situation feel so dire. Also, this is the episode with Galatea. Like, she was shown at the very beginning of the season, but she has a very like unmemorable scene basically. But now we're showing her character a little bit more, and I think the only reason she's remembered by the fandom is because of Icy freezing her wings. Because at this point, that has never been done before, and everyone was like, oh my god, she can do that? She can do that? Is that allowed? Can she just do that? And it feels so invasive. And of course, we then have Musa rescue her in like the burning library, which, by the way, I always found it kind of fascinating that it's Darcy who set the library ablaze, because if anything, the only powers who would be able to create flames would be Stormies because of the lightning, but it's Darcy. And I think that might actually be because that fire is not supposed to be literal. I'm not going to say it's an illusion because it is real fire, but it's dark fire. Because they make a point that Bloom is not able to control the fire because it's just like not reacting like normal fire would, because she is shown time and time again to be able to manipulate flames, but these flames she cannot manipulate. So I'm thinking it's because these are technically not real flames. They're like dark illusionary flames created by Darcy, which I think is really cool. And we need to talk about the fight between Faragonda and Valtor, because this fight is so epic. It's so epic. I love that fight so much. The way that Faragonda is willing to defend her school and her students. And also I think this demonstrates how strong Faragonda actually is, because she's the only one thus far who has been able to actually fight against him to a somewhat successful degree. Like that scene where she blasts him through a row of trees. I love it so much. I do wish though that we would have had a similar scene between Valtor and Griffin. He slaps her against the wall and she's knocked out. Griffin, you're supposed to be stronger than this. Where's your fight? And I do think that Griffin in particular is kind of robbed of a moment like that, because in season 1 she's taken up by the Trix, and then in season 3 she's taken out by well, not the Trix but by Valtor. And I think it's a shame because she is such a badass character, but she never gets to act on it. And I think we all want like an epic Griffin fight scene, don't we? So after that, obviously Farragona's missing, and we find out that she's been turned into a tree, and that, of course, leads us to Lynfia, Flora's home planet, which totally makes sense. And we're introduced to Miele, which is like a cute character. I think she works. I usually don't like the annoying little sister character, but I think it's fine because she's not that important. She's basically a vehicle to have Flora transform, honestly. So it's fine. I do really like the Lynfia arc, even though it's quite short. It's just one episode, basically, like 1.5. I do like that it also focuses on the Tricks a little bit and their rivalry regarding Valtor's affection, because he's giving Stormy more powers, which we don't really get to see. Like, she summons the storm harpies, but that's it. We don't see her like be stronger in a fight, for example. And also, let's talk about the water stairs, because to me as a child, that was so magical. A place where water flows backwards and it reverses time, and the entire like backstory about the willow tree that is crying over his lost sibling. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. And also the Oracle of Lynfia, I love the design. She looks so ethereal and also immortal, which I think is very good. And also to have her not be animated, I think makes it better, because she's not moving. It makes her feel like a being that is on a higher plane of existence, basically, which I think is really pretty. And also we get to see the Tricks as small children at the very end, which I think is so hilarious because the designs are just amazing. Icy's weird bangs and Darcy's glasses, it's amazing. But I do have to say that the fight at the very end is very confusing, because they're like, some characters are just disappearing. Like, for example, Aisha again. Where is she? And another thing I really appreciate about these couple of episodes is that they do really showcase the difference between Enchantix fairies and basic fairies, because, for example, only the Enchantix fairies are able to fly within the strong winds of Lynfia, which I think is a great way to showcase that there's an actual power difference between these two forms. This is followed up by also another amazing episode, because it's the episode where Tecna dies. And I'm not saying that I like Tecna dying, but I do think that it's an epic moment. I love everything about it, the way she earns her Enchantix, and I do have seen people talk about how it doesn't make sense. To me, it was always very obvious, because they straight up say that if that portal explodes, then the entire like universe will be destroyed, which is very hyperbolic, but it does imply that, okay, she literally saved everyone, which includes someone of her home planet. And even if it only applied to Andros, there was probably some Zenith person on that planet. Tourism exists, I guess, so I think this gets a pass. So okay, Tecna's dead now, and the Winx are actually talking about how they're going to disband their club, which is insane. And something that I found very fascinating is that they actually decide to, like, okay, we're going to kill Valtor now, and then we're calling it quits. Then we're not going to be the Winx anymore. So they like sneak their way out of Alfea, and they try to find Valtor, and they actually manage to confront him. And we do see him easily take out Musa and Flora, especially with like spells that are tailor-made for them, which is very creepy, because this shows how strategic he is. He's not just powerful because he has like strong attack spells. He's strong because he actually analyzes his opponent and uses their weaknesses against them. And that's why he then turns Bloom into an ice block, and the Winx are able to free her using fairy dust, and they manage to teleport away right on time. But we leave that episode with a new mystery about Bloom's parents, whether they're alive or not. Valtor is trying to manipulate Bloom by promising her information about her parents. After that, Bloom decides, okay, I cannot be the only one without Enchantix. I am the main character after all, so I do need to get my shit together. And she decides to travel to Pyros, the island of dragons, to just get stronger, whatever that means. But we, of course, know that it'll end up with her gaining her Enchantix by wanting it. So yeah, like, people really don't like this, but I I actually recently had this thought, maybe to gain enchantments you have to save someone from your home planet. So what if this is supposed to be like a metaphor for Bloom having saved herself? Or something like that. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, honestly, don't think about it too much. I do like that they make a point of her enchantix being incomplete. So we know that she's not as powerful as she could be yet. And while that is happening, we see Timmy. Actually, wow, this is the first time I've actually talked about a specialist. They're just so not relevant. Oh my god. So Timmy manages to contact Tekna within the Omega Dimension because they're both geniuses. I think it's a really, really cute moment, and it's a very good example of very healthy masculinity, actually. The only way of him being able to connect with her is by genuinely opening up about his feelings. Talk about like a healthy moral to teach to young boys. That if you want to connect to your girlfriend, you actually have to be willing to open up. So they then decide to travel to the Omega Dimension, which the mechanics of being able to travel to the Omega Dimension are so confusing and bizarre, because on the one hand there's this portal which was supposed to be like the only way out, but that was destroyed. And now they're just flying there, which was established in the very beginning of season 3, so they did do that. They traveled there, they dropped off the tricks just on top of the planet, which also is confusing because it's called the Omega Dimension, but it's also kind of like a planet, so let's not think about that too much. They go there, and they're getting their asses kicked by the inmates, which is so lame. Like, to be fair, there's this one scene where one of the inmates just throws a boulder onto all of the wings, and all of them just fall into a pit. You have wings. You have wings. And also, this was one boulder, and you're 4 people. What? And then we're introduced to the Great White Snake, which is also the heart of the planet, but we don't know that yet. Well, not planet, but you know what I mean. Bloom returns to Althea to find out that everyone's gone, so she decides to follow them with Sky, and they have a moment of reconciliation, but also not really, because it's like, okay, we're on a mission right now, we cannot talk about our feelings at this point, so we do put that off for a little. And then they actually manage to find Tekna, and it's a very sweet moment of reconnection. I've missed Tekna. It's kind of bittersweet that in the arc that focuses on Tekna the most, she's also the least present. So yeah, they really said like, oh, you want Tekna to be more important? Okay, let's make her be dead for like 3 episodes. After they've rescued Tekna and realized that she's not actually dead, they decide to not actually stop being the Winx, and they just continue on their quest to defeat Valtor. Now we have another episode that is kind of standalone-ish, but also very important for the finale, actually. So we are talking about the Museum of Magics, and Valtor weirdly announces that he's going to rob the place, and the Winx are like, why would he do that? At the same time, there's this new mysterious character, Ophir, which is Naboo, obviously. And they end up fighting against both Valtor and the Tricks within the museum, and he basically threatens to kill Naboo in exchange for the Agador box. So the Winx are like, okay, fine, just take the goddamn box. Just take the goddamn box. It's ugly anyway. This is followed up by, honestly, in my opinion, one of the best episodes of the show. I love this episode so much because it's Stella-centric, and I really just like Stella, but also there are so many iconic moments. There's so many iconic moments. We have like the biker outfits, which are just very cute. I love those outfits. And then we have the moment of confrontation between Chimera and Stella, and also Cassandra. That first moment, Stella announces to the royal court, Cassandra is evil and they really shouldn't let her marry the king, and the people trusting her. I think that's really cute, because it's kind of supposed to show if you're a good person, people will listen to you, which is utopic and very much not true, but it's still a nice message. We have her fight Chimera, who at this point managed to get a knock off Scepter of Solaria, I guess. And Stella's just like, oh yeah, you have a scepter now? Well, that does make you princess, girl. So she explodes Chimera. Yeah, here, have the power of 1,000 suns right in your face. And there's actually a very funny animation error that I spotted even as a child, which genuinely made me think that Stella blasted off Chimera's clothes because after she's been attacked, she drops down to the floor and they forget to color in her stomach area. So it looks like she's wearing a two-piece now. And I, as a child, genuinely thought it was because Stella just burned off her midriff. And then we have this epic moment of Stella confronting Cassandra and just like teleporting from place to place in front of her to not have her escape, which is such a power move. And like, the way she's radiating, literally. Oh my god. Now we're actually going to talk about basically the last stretch of the season. We have this one episode about the Pixies, and a lot of people in the fandom really hate this episode. I think it's fine. Like, it's fine. It's light entertainment, and it's kind of in an odd placement, but also I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad about it. I don't know. And I think it actually has some very funny moments. Now we're going to have like a little intermission and talk about Enchantix as a transformation, because I don't think it's a secret that for most fans, including me, Enchantix is the best transformation, and it's the prettiest, it's the best executed in every regard. It's just the best. I do really like Believix as well, I have to admit, and I know a lot of people don't like Believix, but I do like Believix, and I will die on this hill. But let's talk about Enchantix. So we're going to go through all of them in chronological order of achievement. So let's start with Aisha. So Aisha's Enchantix is the most controversial, you could say, because she has multiple versions, and also her transformation sequence is ridiculously short. She was done dirty. She was done dirty, definitely. I don't know why they did that, but considering they had to redo it 3 times, because there's like a blind version, there's the green version, there's the blue version, and it's like, okay, so they spend a lot of time on hers, definitely, even though it's very short. And especially when it comes to the blind version, there's this very sad animation error where they sometimes use her blind transformation sequence way later in the season, 10 episodes later, and she'll be transforming, and if you look closely you're like, oh yeah, she's blind. Which I think is funny, because I always try to imagine how that looked in reality. So was it someone picking the wrong file? Because that must have been the case, right? I do really like her design. I'm one of the few people that actually prefers her green design, I think, because I don't know, I just like her better in green, but I do have to admit that the blue design has more going on in a good way. So the blue design has more accent colors, which makes the entire outfit more dimensional, and it makes it more interesting to look at. But I think when it comes to the harmony of the group, I do understand her being in green is the better choice. Stella's Enchantix is also just amazing. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. I do really like the way that it's in the show compared to stock art and also the movie, because it does have more blue accents. For example, her choker in the show is blue, while in the movie and stock art it's usually orange, and I do think it's just better in blue. I think otherwise it's too much orange. Same actually goes for Aisha's gloves. I prefer them to be yellow. I don't think they're good in purple. I think the yellow is the more interesting accent color, especially because it's very unique, like none of the other girls have yellow gloves. But yeah, Stella, amazing. Musa's Enchantix, I'm kind of torn on actually, because on the one hand, I really love the skirt, this like Chinese lantern inspired skirt, and I do like that it's such a change up on her color palette, and the yellow wings with the purple, at least in the animated version, it works, even though I feel like it shouldn't, and I'm not really competent enough to explain why. Flora's Enchantix, honestly, I remember as a child crying. Like, I'm not even kidding. I remember crying when she earned her Enchantix, and not because of like the emotionality of her rescuing her sister, I didn't care about that. I cried because she was so pretty. I cried because she was so pretty. The very light pink of her dress and her hair, the buns, everything about it's just amazing. She has, I think, the biggest wings. Technically, I think they're supposed to be all like the same size roughly, but hers always seemed the biggest to me. But I think she makes it work. It's like, okay, yeah, go off, queen. Then we have Tegna, and I'm also one of the few people that thinks that her wings are better without the lower half. I think the lower half feels tagged on and is overpowering her very sleek design. I think she's supposed to be very sleek and efficient, and I like the trend of Tekna's wings being the most unique. So in season 1 we obviously have her glider, then in season 3 she doesn't have low wings, and even in season 4 with Beliebix her wings are the most special because she does not really have low wings, she just has this like antennae outlines of low wings that are not actually low wings, and I love that for her. I also think it was a good choice to not lengthen her hair too much because we love hair diversity, and a part of me thinks that it actually would have been really fun if they had kept Musa's hair short in her civilian outfit and just gave her long pigtails in Enchantix. I mean, because all of their hair gets longer in Enchantix, so why not do it for Musa's hair as well? I don't get it, but I mean, it is what it is, it's fine. And then we have Bloom, and something that I find funny about Bloom is that a lot of people seem to really not like her Enchantix because they think it's bland and boring, but I honestly, I really like it. I think it was really pretty, and I remember as a child also finding it really, really pretty. And I also really like her transformation sequence with this very dark background with fire motif. It makes her pop so much. So yeah, all in all, I really just, I mean, Enchantix, I don't have to explain to you why Enchantix is pretty. You all know that Enchantix is pretty. I also really like that they all have fairy dust bottles. I love that gimmick. I know that, for example, the people who grew up with 4Kids, they didn't actually get to see them because the 4Kids version didn't have those animations yet because they had like an earlier cut of the season. Some people think, oh, that's good because the fairy dust bottles are so repetitive and it's so annoying that they keep reusing them. But again, I really need to remind people that when this was airing back in the day, you got to see one episode a day. And if it was a Friday, you had to wait till Monday. So you were not able to rewatch any of this. You watched it when the gods of TV wanted you to. So I remember as a child, every time someone used their fairy dust bottle, it was a highlight. It was a highlight because it was something special you got to see. And also you need to remember, you did not get to see it again. You basically had to like make a mental imprint of that fairy dust bottle because who knows when the next time is that you get to see it. Now they kind of throw in this Deus Ex Machina that is the water stars, which, yeah, okay, it's another force that's opposite to to the Great Dragon. Okay, sure, whatever. And they have to go there by traveling to the Red Tower that then leads them to the Golden Kingdom, which happens to be at the edge of the world, which I always found confusing because if Magix is a planet, how is there an edge? Are there flat earthing magics now? Like, what? Whatever, let's not think about it too hard. A lot of people think this is kind of where the season loses focus, but I do have to say, I still very much enjoy this little arc with the Golden Kingdom because Arcadia, the old ones, they're just so nicely designed, and also I really love that world building, and I really wished we would have visited that place again at any point because I think it's very cool. And also we get these really, really nice scenes with Musa, Tekna, and Stella about them having to sacrifice one very important aspect of their personhood in order to gain the water stars. Tekna's is cute because she does love logic, but she's still human, and I really like that the show makes a point of that. Even though she's this rational techno girly, she's still a human being with a beating heart who's desiring love and affection. And I find that really humanizing for her as a character. Then we have Musa, who kind of has the hardest decision to make because she's confronted with her dead mother, which had been like a subject of discussion the entire show. There's this episode in season 1, The Day of the Rose, where we're introduced to her dead mother, and then in season 2 we have her episode The Show Must Go On, which actually gives us the entire backstory of it, which is lovely. And here we actually meet her and see this conversation between the two of them, and it's so nice. It's just so tough to watch. It kind of makes sense that Arcadia is not giving back her mother, but every time I watch it, there's like this flicker of hope inside of me. What if she does give her back her mother? That would be so nice. Come on. It would be really nice, wouldn't it? And then we have Stella. And Stella, like I already alluded to, this is kind of like the full circle moment of her arc about her feeling defined through her beauty. It's really strong of her to not have a second thought. Oh yeah, this really sucks, and I absolutely hate the fact that I have to give up my beauty for the water stars, but if that's what it takes, I'm going to do it. And I really respect that. And I think she's only able to do that because she has learned that her beauty is not what actually defines her. The show makes a point about her beauty being for Brandon, and that, oh, we don't want Brandon to like be scared of you now, do we? And then she gets her face back, which I think they could have made like a more intrinsic motivation that is only about Stella and not her relationship to Brandon. But sure, whatever. Compulsory heterosexuality will do that to people, I don't know. In the next episode, we're finding out that Naboo is actually Naboo and not Ophir, and that he's been the one she's supposed to marry all along. And yeah, I've been very torn about this because on the one hand, they're a very cute couple and I do really like them as a couple, but on the other hand, like, what's the moral here? Is the moral, okay, so if your parents arrange a marriage for you, maybe still meet the guy, because what if he's your one true love? What are we trying to get out of this? They do actually have a scene where they are meeting all of their parents, and the parents are like, you don't have to marry if you don't want to, but like, it's nice to see that you still found your way together, which I think is very unrealistic. If that actually were to happen in real life and you'd find out like, oh, the person we've arranged our daughter with is actually in love with her and she's also actually in love with him, I think the parents would have doubled down and not given them the freedom to choose. So I think that's kind of unrealistic, but whatever. It's a happy ending for everybody. While that is happening, we also have this show off between Griffin, Farragonda, and Saladin, which I think is very nice. It's cute, it's funny, and I do love the cockiness of Griffin, that she's like, oh yeah, at the end of the day, I would have won against the two of you, of course, but you've been the most defeated one of all of them. Because, okay, technically, I don't think we've ever seen Saladin in an actual fight, which is sad. Griffin, you've lost to a lot of people at this point. Tone it down a little, you know, girl. While those two things are happening, we're also finding out that Valtor says that Bloom's parents are trapped inside of his body. Okay. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's a lie. I guess it makes sense that Bloom would be startled for a second. And I do actually like the follow-up episode about them trying to proofread his lie, and that they have to face the witches. And something that I think people sometimes forget about these things when talking about the show. Back in the day, the ancestral witches, they were very ominous. Every time you saw a glimmer of them, it felt like you were revealed a single very tiny piece of a bigger puzzle. And people don't really appreciate that anymore, like the mystery of it all. And that's why I really, really like this. Of course, we also in this episode have the fight against the witches in their new forms. The form does not have an official name. Like the fandom usually calls it Disenchantix, but that's a 4Kids name, so I'm not going to use that, lol. And people also really don't like those designs because they're very revealing. But I cannot help but stan. Guys, I'm sorry, but I'm a simple queer. I see a cunty outfit and I like it. But I do have to very much critique the fight because the fight is boring as hell. There's some cool touches, like Darcy creating fire illusions again, kind of, but this time they're actual real illusions. A real illusion? Is that an oxymoron? No, it's not. No. What? But other than that, like, the fight is so boring. Also, the way they break into Cloud Tower, I feel like it has not been well established that Cloud Tower disappeared. Because it kind of happens in this very short scene of Griffin like looking up into the sky and hearing Valtor's announcement. And while she's looking up, you can see Cloud Tower like slowly disappearing behind her. But honestly, that could have been an animation error for all I know. It's so much in the background that as a child, I kind of felt like, oh, did I miss something? when did that happen? When did Cloud Tower disappear? But I mean, it reappears in like a couple of seconds because they just very dusted back into existence. And now I actually come to the finale. And the finale, something that I really like about the end is that we're shown Valtor unraveling. He has been so cocky and so on top of everyone this entire season, but now he's actually like, oh my god, while I have been able to get further and further, the Winx are definitely catching up to me. They are catching up to me. And I think because he has been defeated once before, and we know that because he has been defeated by the Company of Light, more specifically by Bloom's parents, I think he's it's triggering his anxiety. And I do like that we get a little bit more of the Trix's personalities as well, of them mocking him, which I think is very funny and cute. And then he decides to go all Avatar on them and it's like, water, fire, earth, and air, Guardians unite. Well, that's not Avatar, that's Witch, but whatever. It's kind of basic. I think they shouldn't have done the 4 elements thing. They could have done it in the first episode with like the schools and magics being attacked by the 4 elements, but I don't think they should have made it to be the most powerful spell in the magic universe. It's too hyperbolic. And then we have the actual fight and them using the water stars, which I think is good, question mark. I don't know. I do like how they're protecting Bloom, but Bloom is also like, guys, this is not going to work forever. You cannot just stand there and take all of the hits because you know that the water stars can't hurt you. This is not going to work forever. And then they kind of just bury him under Ray Grocaluce, which, okay. I do really like that the Tricks are just like, okay, yeah, you're on your own now. Bye girl. Bye, Felicia. There's this implication that they're going back to Mount, what's it called? The Light Rock Monastery. That's what it's called. The Light Rock Monastery. Because to be honest, that's the beginning of season 2 with them in that monastery and them being like therapied on is so funny. It's so funny. And here comes the part where the finale of season 3 really falters in comparison to season 1 and 2, because season 1's finale is basically like 5 episodes long, which is kind of crazy. And season 2's finale is also multiple episodes long. And season 3 has these 2 finale episodes that are very standalone-ish, and they don't feel connected at all because it's like, okay, we've defeated Valtor. Oh, no, we actually didn't. Oh, but now we actually did. And it's like, what? And also him capturing all the specialists. Okay, sure. I think it's kind of a nice role reversal to try to be feminist about it, that the Winx are like saving their boyfriends or whatever. But still, they have these weird transitions that have not been used in any other episode ever. Okay, did you need to pad out the runtime? Why are you doing these transitions? The fake specialists in the 4 elements are cute, but for example, the scene where Techna defeats Air Timmy, they have this animation error where he's not actually dissolving into air, he's splashing into water just like Brandon. This is kind of destroying the entire symmetry of it all, which I hate. Like, these are things that I noticed and that do keep me up at night. And then we have this last face-off between Bloom and Valtor that is happening inside of Valtor. Oh, okay, and like, sure, and then she kills him from within. And then it's over. Okay, so yeah, that just happened. What was he actually trying to do at this point? The Tricks had abandoned him and they have already been put back into Light Rock Monastery for all we know. And he's retreated back into the Omega portal and he took some specialists, and it's like, what are you actually trying to achieve at this point, Valtor? He feels like someone who doesn't know he's lost. And that is kind of really pathetic. But that, in a bizarre way, actually really matches his character, because I think he is set up to be epitome of male patheticness in a way. He's so full of himself. He thinks he's stronger, better, and just superior to everyone. And then he breaks under the pressure of his self-created ego fantasy, which is honestly amazing. But I do think in execution, it kind of just does not create the best finale, at least not the way they did it. I think they could have done it if they had really doubled down on this very specific aspect of Valtor actually being somewhat of a loser, but they didn't do that, so it feels like a rushed cliche fantasy ending, which is a shame because after all this is still the best season. And then we end on a cliffhanger about Bloom fantasizing about finding her parents, and again I really need to emphasize how back in the day this was special. I watched this entire show when I was a child, and following her journey through 3 seasons and still not really knowing anything about where her parents are, you really wanted to know. It was something that was on children's minds. It was like, okay, where are they? People don't give the show enough credit for that, because nowadays in the era of binge watching, we're so used to getting answers straight away. But this was a question that had been lingering in our minds as children for years. So we really wanted to know. So it was like honestly the perfect last scene, because it was the ultimate hook for the following movie, The Secret of the Lost Kingdom. So yeah, while season 3 definitely is not perfect, because no media is, and there are certain aspects of it that I would definitely change, I do think it's still the strongest season. After that, actually, my personal ranking is season 3, season 2, season 1. Probably, if I'm going to continue this is also the order I'm going to talk about the seasons. And then after that, I'm going to talk about season 4, because season 4, honestly, I really like season 4. I do consider it to be part of the golden age of Winx, so I still really like season 4, but to me it's basically impossible to put it in a hierarchy with the first 3 seasons, so it's kind of always been off to the side. So yeah, if anyone actually listened to me ramble about this for so long, I hope you enjoyed my rambling and you found it entertaining or thought-provoking. I don't think I reinvented the wheel or anything, and probably all of the things I said have been said before by other better people, I don't know. But yeah, thank you for listening. Bye-bye!